Hey, what's going on guys? Core X Designs here and welcome to another 3D Studio Max tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to set up HDRIs in 3D Studio Max, and this tutorial is specifically for car renders, but you can actually use it for anything that you want basically. The setup of HDR is really simple, and I'll be showing you how to do it. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to be needing is a car. So I'm going to be using my Dodge Challenger model to actually demonstrate this thing. So what we need first thing is to decide the HDRI that we're going to be using. So there are a lot of free HDRIs available on the internet, and I have one of them. It's from a photographer called Harneman, and he has some great HDRI images for you to use. Unfortunately, he just has two that are free. So, I got those free ones and they were pretty good as well. So, let me go ahead and open one of them for you and show it to you. Okay, so as I said, this is Harneman Photographer from ARCGI, which is a pretty high class 3D studio. So this is the backlit image that he's given us, and I have the exact same HDRI for this. So let's go ahead and try to composite this Challenger onto this scene. Now he actually did an Aventador here, but I thought I did an Aventador tutorial a while back, so why not use a different model this time? So I'm using the Challenger, and we're gonna be compositing it on this here. So let's go ahead and first thing set up our HDRI to work with, and then we're gonna be tweaking this a little bit to make our car look like it's actually in the scene. So let's go ahead and first thing we're going to do is hit 8 to bring up our environments and effects dialog box, and then hit M to bring up our material editor. Then on the first material slot, we're going to be changing this to a V-Ray HDRI map. So we could do it two ways. So what we're going to do is click on this get material thing here, move down until we find the V-Ray HDRI map, which is here. Double click on that. That's going to load up the the HDRI. We can go ahead and close this for now, and we can hit browse here and then go ahead and browse the HDRI that you want to use. So I think I use this one. I think this was it. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up the HDR, hit open, and it's gonna load it up here. Okay, so at the moment nothing is visible here. Actually it's really dark, that's why you can't see it, but we're gonna be setting it up really quickly. So what we're gonna do is change the mapping type from angular to spherical, because that's how the map was mapped, and then click and drag it onto the environment slot. Make sure you make it an instance, not a copy, and hit OK, and that should set up our HDR pretty well. Now we need to set up a camera so that we can actually look at the car. So let's go ahead and choose any pose that we want to. Then go to cameras and V-Ray. I'm going to create a V-Ray physical camera, and you can create it basically anywhere in the scene. Just make sure you put the target of the camera, which is the dot that follows my cursor, at the very center of the car, and that just makes it easier for us to orbit around the car and do some pretty crazy stuff. So while the camera is selected, I'm going to go into my perspective and hit Control C, and what that's going to do is align the camera just the way I was looking at it from the perspective. So I wanted the camera to look exactly the way as I did in the perspective, and that's why I did it. So I'm gonna hit C here to have a look at what the camera is viewing, and that's what it is. So yeah, so let's go ahead and start to see what this is looking at right now. So I'm gonna right click and hide selection, hide the car for now. Go into my render setup and change this from production renderer to active shade, V-Ray RT, and we're gonna be seeing how it looks. But before we do that, we need to set up some stuff in V-Ray Advanced so that we can actually view it in perfect conditions. So we need to go to V-Ray tab, and we go into global switches, go to lights, and turn this off with GI, or we could maybe just turn it off with hidden here. Change the image sampler type to adaptive DMC and the anti-aliasing filter to Mitchell Nature Valley with zero blur. There we go. To environment, we don't need to meet any settings, any changes, but in the color mapping, we need to change this from linear multiply to exponential. Moving on to indirect illumination, we need to turn it on and turn on ambient occlusion as well. The primary bounces are going to be radiance map, second one is going to be light cache, pretty standard. For radiance map, we're going to be choosing a low preset so that we can have a look at it much easier. Moving down to light cache, I'm going to change the subdivisions to 1000, and that should be it for this. Moving on to settings, change the noise threshold to 0.005 and the dynamic memory limit to 4000 so that we can use more of our RAM. And then what we're going to do is lock this view here, and that's going to allow us to render this easily. And just hit, oh okay, we need to change this to active shade now, and we're going to be turning off the messages so that we don't get any unwanted things here when we make lights invisible. So that should be it. Let's go ahead and hit the active shade, see how it looks right now. Okay, so everything's black here, and there are actually three reasons for that to happen. First off, the camera exposure is set to too high. Secondly, maybe there are no lights, which is the case in our scenario. And the third one is because the HDRI is too dark, and which is also the case in our scenario. So let's go ahead and start tweaking stuff up one by one. So I'm going to take the camera here, and we're going to change up some settings here. What we're going to do basically is change the f number from 8.0 to 5.6, and change the white balance to neutral, and that's it. That should be it for the camera. Then we need to go ahead and add some lights. So let's go ahead into create panel. We go into lights, and we're going to be using a V-Ray light. Now we're not going to be using a V-Ray light, actually we're going to be using a V-Ray sun to make it look more realistic. Now remember, whenever you're using exterior HDRIs, always try to use the V-Ray sun instead of the V-Ray light, because that just gives us a lot more natural results, should I say. So let's go ahead and drag from anywhere and put it on our scene right there. Okay, when it asks you to automatically add a V-Ray sky environment map, just hit no here, because we already have an HDRI, we don't want to mess with it. And what I'm going to do is just randomly position this sun anywhere. We have to tweak it to suit our HDRI, but we're going to be doing that afterwards. Okay, so the third thing that I said that might be the problem was, okay, so if you have a look at the active shade window, you still can't see anything, and the reason that is happening probably is because you hit M here on the here, so we can see that the image here is very dark. So let's go ahead and change the processing overall multiplier to something like 10. That's going to brighten up the image. So as you can see, it starts to get visible on the camera here, and we can also turn on the render multiplier to 10. So basically now we have quite a bright image, and it's just looking pretty good actually. Okay, let's hit M to bring up a material editor, and on this we're going to change the horizontal rotation, and just gonna go ahead and find a good spot to render, and I think that looks pretty good. We could do it this way, or we could just make it coming right at us. So let's just go with this, maybe. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. So that's the way we're doing this. Now observe where the sun is coming from. The sun is actually coming from above the it's actually really difficult to show you on 2D screen, but the sun is actually coming from behind the camera if you have a look closely. Or what you can do is just have a look at the backplane image that I showed you guys before, which is this. So the sun is actually coming from here, and our camera is somewhere in here. So this sun actually wraps around to behind the camera. So yeah, that's where the sun is coming from. I'm gonna close bridge. So let's go ahead and position the sun wherever it should be. I think it should be somewhere here. Okay, and if you have a look, you'll be able to better see it. So see it from this viewport. So this is where this is coming from the back, and I think it's gonna be pretty back here. There we go, and that should be looking pretty good now. Okay, so the sun is set up, everything is set up. One thing that we need to do now is unhide the car. So right click, unhide all, and this is gonna take a while, so I'm gonna still pause the video here. Okay, so the car is here, but it doesn't look really realistic. It doesn't look in the scene at all. So what we do is just gonna close active shade for now, and we're gonna do a few things to make it look better. First off, we need a ground plane for it to have shadows and stuff. So the same thing that we did in the Aventador tutorial, we're gonna change this create geometry to V-Ray. Take a V-Ray plane and just go ahead and create it anywhere in the scene. Okay, and then we're just gonna line it up with the wheels of the car so that it looks like it's on the floor. And I repeat, the reason we're using a V-Ray plane instead of a regular plane is because V-Ray plane automatically extends itself to to make the entire floor on its own. It's automated. So that's why we're using a V-Ray plane. And if you want to know why we're using a V-Ray plane, you could actually watch that video of mine. I'm not going to repeat myself again and again. So we need to select the V-Ray plane, then right click and hit object properties. I'm sorry, not object properties, V-Ray properties. And we need to make this a matte object, take the alpha contribution to -1. And the reason that we're doing this is so that the camera does not see it as a plane. And we need that because if the camera sees it as a plane, then it's probably going to be visible in the render. So that's not good. We're going to take shadows so that it can accept shadows, and affect alpha so that we can actually make it. Okay, so let me show you. Let me tell you what I mean. So there are two alphas here. One is the alpha in the final image, which is black and white, white for transparent, black for invisible. And then there's an alpha contribution. So alpha contribution refers to the camera, and if it's set to -1, the camera will not see it, but it will still affect the alpha. That's what we're trying to do here. Okay, and then just turn everything down to 0 so that it does not glow or anything, and it just doesn't make anything worse. We hit close here, and let's go ahead and start to see how it looks. So I'm just gonna active shade it and see how it looks. Okay, so that's where we are right now, and as you can see, we have some shadows here, and it really looks really cool. So what we're gonna try to do now is position the car on this. Now, one what do I call it? Drawback with this technique is that you cannot orbit the camera now, because if you do, you're gonna completely destroy the background. As you can see, that's how we destroy the background. So if you want the background to stay exactly the same as this, you have to move the car instead of the camera, which is kind of a lame thing on my part, I guess, but that's how things roll, so we have to do it. Okay, so but before we actually set that up, we need to set up one last thing in order to have good reflection on the car, and also to make it look a little more into the scene. We're going to be creating a skylight, okay? And why are we doing this? Let me show you with the skylight and without the skylight what difference it makes, and then you probably know why we're using it. So we're going to be using a V-Ray light, but before you draw it, make sure you change the type from plane to dome, and just create it anywhere in the top viewports. Okay, and then just go ahead and move this down here. Oops. Alright, so we need to select that. Now this is a big pain to select that light from somewhere. We usually use the select by name type and then select the V-Ray light. Just makes it easier. Move it down here. There we go. And then we're going to change the multiplier to 1 and move down to make it invisible, or actually just keep it that way. It doesn't really matter. We can make it invisible. It won't be visible. Hit M to bring up our material editor, and just go ahead and drag this onto a texture. Use texture and make it an instance. Hit OK, and just go ahead and increase the resolution of the shadows a bit. So we hit 2048, and close to good to me. So let's go ahead and try to active shade this, and just finally position the car where we want it. So okay, so now you see that the plane becomes visible, and the reason that is happening is only because of this skylight. Don't worry, the plane will not be visible in the final render. It's just visible here. I don't know why this happens, but it does. So we could just move the skylight up or anywhere we want, but the plane will still be visible. We could actually move it down below it, but you cannot hide the plane in any way. So I just kind of leave it there and just work with it. So because the plane is partially transparent, we can actually work with it. Not a problem that much. Okay, so we're gonna move it here, and then we select the light, the plane, and the car, and we go ahead and make a selection of this, or you can make a group, whatever you want. Just gonna make a group here and name this I don't know, stuff. And the reason we're doing this is because when we rotate the car like this, we also want the plane and the light to rotate with it. And why do we want the plane to rotate with it? Because if you move it like this and the plane is still horizontal, your car will look like it's going into the ground, which should not be the case. Why are we using the light here? I have no idea. I think I did that by mistake. But still, it's still there, so it doesn't really matter, because the skylight, no matter where you position it or how you position it, it's going to spread out light in the exact same way. So we're going to hit active shade now for the final time. Okay, so it's there. Let's go ahead and start to make our car look good. So we have the active shade here, and I'm working on this viewport right here. So I'm gonna hit W to bring up my move tool. What the hell? Okay. And let's go ahead and move it here to the side, maybe, to position it on the road. Just wait for it a while, because the camera is also recording while the V-Ray is rendering, and my computer is pretty slow, to be honest. So what I'll do is probably make a move and then pause the video, wait for it to render a bit, and then go on. So I'm sorry the video seems stuttery and stuff. It's because I paused a lot, basically. So yeah, I'll just follow that technique. Okay, so that's how it looks right now. Let's go ahead and try to rotate it a bit, and to make it fit in better. So hit E to bring up a rotation tool, rotate it a bit. Okay, that's how it looks. One thing that you might have noticed is if you go ahead and pan the camera here, it won't affect the image. So that's a good thing for us, actually. If you pan the camera or zoom in or out using the dolly camera, it will not affect the HDRI. So we're going to be using a combination of rotation on the thing and panning and zooming on the camera. So we're just gonna move it back here and try to position it on the track here. Just go ahead and move this down. Okay, just move it here just a little bit so that we get it on the road here. Maybe a little more. I guess that should be it. So now the car is looking like it's on the road, I guess. So let's go ahead and try to close off this VRT, and then just go ahead and try to render this out in production value. So we're just gonna render this out and wait for it to render, and then return when it's done. Okay, so that's how it looks when rendered, but this just doesn't seem in the scene, according to me. And the reason that's happening is because the scene is all motion blurred, and the car is not. So it actually looks like it's out of the scene. One thing that we could do is change the color of the car. So I'm just gonna really quickly do that. Go group open. Oh, sorry. Group open. Select this. Okay, I'm just gonna go in and do this in the perspective. Don't want to mess up the camera. Go group open again. Take all of this, and let's go ahead and apply a red material to this. And let's see how it looks in VRT. So active shade, active shade. So you can see that we start to see some actual reflections on the car. But red frankly doesn't look too good in this. Let's try orange here. See how it looks. Kind of suits it, so I'm just gonna leave it there. So that's how it looks right now. But what we need to do is actually motion blur it in Photoshop to actually make it look better. But one thing that we can do in Max is a very slight adjustment that just makes everything look much more dynamic. And the thing we do is we roll the camera. So we just click on this roll camera button and just go ahead and rotate the camera. Okay, something like this. And make sure you turn off angle snaps. Okay, let's move it somewhere here like that. And now if you hit active shade, you'll see what I'm talking about. Everything looks more dynamic. So as you can see, just by tilting the camera or rolling the camera, we make everything look more dynamic. So let's go ahead and try to add some motion blur to this car now. Yeah, we're gonna be using that. We could do this in Photoshop or any other software, but I personally prefer to do it in Max because that just makes it a lot more dynamic, or actually a lot more, what would I call it, natural. So there we go. So what we're gonna do is take the car and we're just gonna move it really back. Okay, and we're gonna check auto key here while having the car selected, and we're gonna hit the key button to set a key. Actually, before we do all of that, we need to take the car and select auto key and make a key. Let's go ahead and move it to frame number 5. And the reason we're doing this is so that we don't lose our position when we move it back. So it's gonna go back to first frame and just go ahead and move it really back here. it's going to automatically create a key here. So now if we go ahead and play back the animation, you're going to have a really quick animation like this. Okay. We take this and we go to track view here. Click on that. We go controller and we go out of range types and we select relative repeat. Hit OK. Close. And what that does is basically makes the animation go on even after frame number 5. So we have like this, and then after frame 5, it just still continues to move forward. This gives us a lot more. I don't know what I call it. Motion blur, I guess. So if you try to render this out at frame number 5, we're gonna actually have some motion blur now. So let's go ahead and try to render this out in production stages. Hit render, and I'll return when it's done. Okay, silly me, I did not turn on motion blur. I should. Such a fool. Anyways, just go ahead and select your camera and move down, turn on motion blur, take your objects, right click, object properties, go general, turn on enabled and change that to image. You can do it that way, or if you want to, you can actually go into our render setup, go into V-Ray, move down to V-Ray camera, and just turn on motion blur here. Hit on here, okay? So I'm just going to do everything just to make sure that motion blur works. And then we're going to be rendering this out. Okay, so we go here and we hit render. And we hit render. Okay, so that's how it looks when rendered. One thing that I'm noticing is the shadows here are pretty sharp in my opinion, and sharp shadows aren't usually characteristic of our sun, so what we're going to do is make him softer. So first off, what we could do is just make the sun closer, and then change the size multiplier to something larger, like 3 maybe, or maybe 4, doesn't matter, doesn't really know, and give it a render. I'm sorry about repeated renders, but you have to just go on rendering in order to see which setting work for you. So I'm just gonna return when it's done. Actually, before we start rendering, I'm just gonna do a small change to the viewer physical camera so that we can have motion blur here. So we need to go into our shutter speed here, which is 200 by default, and change it to something lower like 100. And what that's gonna do is allow us to have more motion blur. So a lower shutter speed would mean more motion blur, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to go ahead and render this out, and this is probably going to be our last render so far. Okay, so that was probably too much of shutter speed, too low shutter speed. So I'm just going to try something like 125, and that should do pretty well. So while this renders, this is probably going to be the last render, and this is probably done the entire image. So let's just wait and see how it looks right now. Okay, so that is looking pretty good in my opinion, and I think we're ready to finally render this out using all settings. One thing that I did notice was the strange acting of these trees here, and I think this is happening because of our skylight. So we're just gonna open that up, take our skylight, just go and move it up here. Whoops. Just the skylight. Go and move it up here. It's happening because the map of the skylight, I think, is actually, acting up weird. But that should fix it. So let's go ahead and go over our final render settings for one last time. So everything in common should be pretty good. Should be 1280 by 720. Actually, this only took 2 minutes. So 1280 should probably take around 5 minutes to render, which is pretty good actually. So V-Ray. Everything here should be pretty good, I think. We could turn it on or off, doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to keep it there. We could change the subdivision from 6 to 16, and it's going to make it a lot smoother. Moving on to indirect illumination, we need to change the preset to high, and everything else looks good, 60-30. Show calculation phase is going to be tagged. Light cache is going to be 2000 samples. But this is really your choice. I like to use a high sampling. So settings, and everything in settings should be pretty good. Okay, so let's go ahead, and this is gonna be the final render that we do when we hit that button, which I'm not gonna do it right now in front of the camera. So yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit the like button down below and subscribe to my channel for many more upcoming videos and tutorials and speed models and whatnot. everything 3D related. So I'm gonna be signing off now, but be sure to tune in. And okay, so one thing that I know is I just have 18 more subscribers to go for 3,000. So I wanted to ask you guys what I should do for you. I have no idea what to do because I just did a giveaway at 2,000 subscribers. But I really want to appreciate everyone out there who subscribed to me to make me go to 3,000, and this just feels really good. So just leave your comments in the comment section. What do you think I should do? Probably, something I don't know, but still. Don't ask for anything shipping related because shipping related giveaways because I won't be able to do that. But yeah, I could do digital giveaways if you guys wanted. So yeah. So thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Till then, have a nice day.